show you how to replace the thermostat on a 2002 Mitsubishi Lancer and how to flush your coolant system. So first thing we'll need is need a jack and some jack stands and something to catch your coolant with, water hose, and your car. So my favorite place to jack up the Lancer is on the cross member. It's a real strong connection piece. I just like to get it on that hook right there. I've never had any trouble jacking up there, and I've jacked this car up many times. So, yep, just right on the hook and jack on up. And then once you get it to the top, we'll put jack stands up underneath it. And once you get the wheels off the ground with it jacked up like that, get a jack stand underneath each side of the frame of the car, and that way it can't go anywhere. And after you have your jack stands up and you leave your jack underneath it just in case, the passenger side of the vehicle, you probably won't be able to see this, but there is the you can almost see right straight down straight down there. There's the knob to turn to drain the radiator. So that's the next step. So we'll remove the radiator cap, and of course you want to make sure the engine's completely cooled, no pressure in it or anything like that. So don't do this when the engine's hot. Remove the radiator cap, and then we'll go underneath and find that drain plug. So this is on the passenger side, and that wing nut plastic plug right there is the one that you want to turn. It'll start draining coolant out of the plug once you get it loosened, so you have to have something underneath it to catch it. But you should be able to turn it by hand. Hopefully you don't need pliers on it, because you could easily break it if you try to turn it with pliers. And I kind of recommend a shallow pan like that, because there's not a whole lot of room you're going to have underneath here. And as you can tell, it goes straight down. Once you turn it several times, it goes straight down that hole in your under car ballast, or whatever that piece of plastic's called. So just fill that thing up. Drain the radiator completely, and we'll go on to step 2 of removing the hoses. And I want to note with antifreeze, obviously it's toxic. You don't want to get it around children, you don't want to get it on your skin, you don't want to get it around animals, because they will eat it because it has a sweet flavor and it'll kill them. And especially used antifreeze can contain lead and copper heavy metal deposits in it from running in your system, and it can be toxic even on your skin. So don't get it on your skin even. Seal it up tight and take it to a recycle facility. And you can also remove your overflow tank. That just removes, it just goes straight down there, and literally, as you can see, it's just a metal clip that holds it in. You just kind of push it to the side and pull up, and it comes right out. You just loosen that band there, and that hose will pull right off of it as well. And go ahead and dump that into here like I did. You can inspect this. It should be a good healthy green color. This looks really dark, almost like motor oil. It doesn't have oil in it, which is good. But if you can inspect this to see the condition of it, see if it has motor oil in it. May have a cracked head gasket or something if that's the case. Now I went ahead and sprayed this overflow tank out with the hose and got all the crap out of it. And my radiator's done draining. So what we're going to do now is close that drain plug back up that we drained it with. Then we're going to remove our upper and lower radiator hoses, because I'm also replacing those. You don't have to necessarily, but if it's been, 4 or 5 years or longer since they've been replaced, you probably want to go ahead and replace them as a precautionary thing. And if yours still has the factory hoses on it like mine does, and I don't know if this was a problem with all Lancers or not, but you can't really tell, but this lower hose right here is kind of concaved on itself and not round anymore. So that's one of the main reasons why I'm replacing mine. But just to take these off, you need a pair of channel locks will do, or some kind of pliers, and you literally just squeeze these two ends together right here on this hose clamp, and just kind of wiggle it back onto the hose itself, like that, which is easier to do with one hand than I thought it would be. And then you just kind of twist this off. Now you want to have a pan underneath here because it's probably going to leak some out of there too, but you just twist this off and pull it off, and then have that pan catch whatever's there, and then we'll go to the next step. Alright, now I'm going to put the overflow tank back in, and literally it just slides down there like it was before, and those that lip slides into that metal groove, which I can't show you because the lighting sucks here, but it'll be self-explanatory. You just kind of push it down just a little, it snaps in place. Put this hose back on it, and then just put this hose clamp back on the hose, and it shouldn't, when you remove the lower radiator hose like we just did in the previous step, there's not going to be a whole lot of radiator coolant, but that comes out because you already drained the radiator, but there will be a little bit. So now we're going to spray water in with the water hose through here down into the radiator to flush the radiator itself out, and with the bottom of the radiator open, it should drain out of that bottom port that's open now. So we will just push this lower hose out of the way for now, and it'll come out of that port right there. Come out of that port right there in the bottom of the radiator, and so we'll need something there to catch that, obviously. We're just gonna drain or flush some of the crap that's in the radiator out of there, and then we'll move on to the next step of doing it through the engine block. Alright, so you take your pink water hose handle, doesn't have to be pink, but it does help, and you put it on the radiator like so, and let's see if you can see there. So that's draining out there at the bottom of the radiator. I like to do pulsating blasts, so kind of pop it on, pop it off, pop it on, pop it off, pop it on, pop it off. That has a tendency to jostle stuff, so let's give that a shot. And you're gonna have stuff blow back like that, you know, it's just part of it. And you probably won't need to do a whole lot of this, but you know, just try to do enough to wash out all the crap that's in the radiator. In all honesty, as new as our cars are, there probably isn't a lot of crap unless you had some issues. Yeah, that's going pretty clear already, which is to be expected. So I'll do this just a little bit more and then move on to the next step. Now at this point, I'm going to actually, this is my, here's the upper radiator hose, so the lower one's down here, the one we've been working on, took off earlier. This right here is your actual thermostat housing. 2 bolts hold it on, as you can see. I'm actually going to remove that and remove the thermostat to do the flushing, because the thermostat will close up and it doesn't open until a certain temperature, so you need it out of the way. It's a good idea. Thermostats are cheap. Might as well go ahead and replace it. Put a 170 in there to get lower temperature stat in there, get a tiny bit better performance out of it. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and remove that. And the thermostat's just held on by two 12mm bolts, so you can just back those out, and you'll be good to go. Probably take 2 hands to break this loose without busting my knuckles, so I'll be back in a second. Now that we've got that removed, we're going to put the pink spray nozzle back in there and blow through it. It should go through the engine block and come back out down here to drain out of the transmission housing, so you can flush out the engine block this way. And obviously you want to have stuff to catch it there, or you're going to get stuff everywhere, get coolant everywhere. Same pulsating deal. Got my Gates new thermostat on here, or in here. Compare it to the old stat here and make sure, you know, it's gonna line up right. And I went ahead and got the new sill on it. Obviously it's like 70 cents, get a new sill. And that's my old one right there. As you can see, the sill is absolutely whooped on it. I'm surprised it wasn't leaking like a sieve. But compare these up, look about the same. Should be good to go. Go ahead and put it back in there. It just kind of slides right in there. Oops, sorry, let's do that again. It just kind of slides right in there and butts up. The sill goes right around and sills, and then we'll put this housing back on it, put the bolts in it, and install the new hoses. Alright, now that you got these snugged up here, you obviously don't want to over tighten them because that could be a major pain in the ass to try and find a replacement for that if you crack it. So just snug them up real good. Check for leaks later. We'll go ahead and put the new hoses on it, take this old one off, put the new hoses on it. I want to make sure to use new hose clamps. They're like $3. There's no reason not to. Factory ones are probably wore out. You don't have to get these gay ones like I got, but you do need new hose clamps. Alright, so now that I've got the new radiator hoses, or upper and lower radiator hoses installed, the new ones, got the thermostat replaced. Now the process that we did today did not actually flush the heater core, which is those, you can't really see it, but it's those two hoses back there. You can barely see them right there. It didn't really flush the heater core, and the reason I didn't is just because what we're doing next is going to flush it partially, and I'm not that worried about it. It's a lot of work to get back in there, and I'd have to install a kit to be able to properly do it. I just don't want to do all that. But so what I'm doing instead is I'm going to run this flush cleaner through the radiator, and basically all you do is once you get done draining it, or flushing it like we've done so far up to this point, you just pour the contents of this into the radiator, and then you just fill it the rest of the way with water. And you can do a like a short cleaning of like 15 minutes, letting the thing idle, and re-drain it and all that, and make sure, you know, flush it out again. Or you can do what I'm going to do, which is like 3 days of driving it, you know, like to I think it's like 100 miles. It says on the back here in the directions, but I'm going to drive it around and give it a good 100 miles or so in the radiator, and flowing through the block. It'll flow through the block. It'll flow through the heater core, because I'll run the heat also, but it would flow through the heater core some anyways. But I'm going to run the heat to make sure it flows through there good. Let it idle, and then I'm going to re-drain it and re-flush it like we already have done, just to make sure that all this cleaner is out of the system. Then I'm going to fill it up with coolant the way it's supposed to, 50-50. I just buy the 50-50 premix stuff, so I'm not mixing non-diluted water or distilled water in there. And we'll go from there. So we'll just fill this up the rest of the way now. Fill the radiator up the rest of the way with water. and just so we have, you know, stuff to actually cool there. And then we'll drive it around for 100 miles or so and come back. Alright, so I've filled the radiator back up with water all the way. As you can see, I put water in here as well. Now the block, we probably pushed a little bit of water out of it, so it may or may not, the car may or may not be just a little low on water, but it should be fine. We'll run it for a little while and then check it. But what we're going to do is take the jack stands back out from underneath the car. Then we're going to jack the car down, or let the car down. And then we're going to run it, put the cap back on the radiator, obviously. Run it, check, make sure nothing's leaking. You know, our hose connections and the radiator, or the thermostat housing, all that. Make sure the drain plug down there that we drain the radiator with isn't leaking. And if everything looks good, we're going to drive it around for, you know, whatever the Prestone recommends mileage-wise. I'm going to do about 100 to 200 miles probably, and then re-drain it and reflush it. And then I'm just going to call it good and put some 50-50 coolant mix in it and call it a day. Okay, I got it running in here with the heat on now, still circulating that flush fluid. Like I said, we'll do that for about 100 miles. Got the heat on full blast, and with that new 70 degree or 170 degree thermostat in it, it runs a little cooler than, I mean, 10 degrees cooler, but it has a hard time even kicking the fans on. It'll probably kick them on in the heat of the summer, obviously, but they won't run as often as they did with the 180 degree thermostat, which is totally fine with me. But yeah, so we'll let it idle with the heat on for a little while, drive it around with the heat on if you can stand it. Then just, you know, drive it normally with that, without the heat on and all that as well. And we'll get about 100 miles out of it. Alright, now that we've ran it for 100 miles here, gonna go ahead and re-drain the system and flush it again to get all the flush fluid out of it, and then we'll just charge it up with regular coolant, 50-50 mix. Wanted to note that it's not entirely necessary to jack the car up to be able to do this, but it just makes it easier to get at it from underneath. But I'm not going to jack it up this time, and we're just going to once again get to that bleeder port on the lower passenger side of the radiator and empty it out first thing. Okay, we're draining again, and we went ahead obviously and took the cap off the radiator so it would drain properly. And once we get that done, we'll remove the top radiator hose at the radiator and flush through the engine block. And lastly, we'll want to flush out the radiator just a little bit to get any kind of residue off the fins in there. Alright, got the thermostat removed from the lower radiator housing there. So now it should free flow through up into the upper radiator hose, through the engine block, down and through the lower radiator hose, and into the bottom of the radiator that we still have open with the bleeder port on it, which will then drain out. And this will be our final stage of flushing, as I'm not super concerned to flush the heater core itself. Alright, we're going to go ahead and put our thermostat back in place here. It literally is probably the easiest step of all. If you can do it with two hands, which I'm trying to do it with one. Literally the barb sticks back in there. You have the seal around the thermostat. Make sure you have a good seal, and you literally just stick it right in there. That's all there is to it. Put the housing back over it and the bolts back through, which are 12mm bolts, and snug them down pretty decent. You don't have to get too crazy on it, but you know, snug them down. Also, you'll find when doing this job that after a few days you'll want to go back and retighten your hose clamps that you replaced, especially if it was new hose, because it'll have a tendency to kind of need to be tightened down a little more, because the hose will flex a little given the temperature change in use. Now we'll close the bleeder port on the bottom of the radiator up and make sure that all of our connections are in. We have the thermostat in, got the lower and upper radiator hoses connected. Then we can start filling this up with 50-50 mix, or if you live in a really cold climate, maybe as much as 70-30, but whatever you choose to run in it. I went ahead and filled that up with 50-50 mix, and I'm gonna fill this up now, 50-50 mix. I poured all the water I had in it out of it. So, once again, one-handed, a little more difficult, but yeah. And about 1 gallon of this should do. You may need just a hair more than 1 gallon, but I'm going to get by with 1 gallon personally. And if I have to, I'll add just a little distilled water to top it off. But I think 1 gallon's going to be enough. Okay, so we're ready to burp the system. Everything's tight. Thermostat's in, radiators filled up. And so now what we're going to do is, with the cap off, start the car, let it run, and in the process of running it may or may not work some air bubbles out of the system if there are any in it, which there really shouldn't be, since the flushing process that we did wouldn't leave air vacuums in it, but it would leave chambers full of water. But so we'll there's a little air coming out right there. You always have the risk of having air in the system, but the way we did it, there's very little risk of it. But we'll start it and let it run for a while, try to get up to operating temperature with the cap off. It may or may not rise a little bit. It's okay if it rises out of there a little bit, but it may or may not go down and air bubbles come out. So we'll just keep an eye on it and see how it does. And once it gets to operating temperature and runs there for a couple minutes, and we can close it up if we top it off if it needs it. Then just close up the system, turn the car off, and check for leaks while it's running and all that, and then make sure everything looks good and we're good. Okay, we got it running now, and so far so good. Water levels stayed about the same. In all honesty, I overfilled it when I filled it up a little bit. I shouldn't have put it that close to the top, but everything's looking good as far as leaks go. Don't have any so far. We'll keep an eye on it. One thing important to note is that you will probably smell some burning antifreeze as the car's running, because you inevitably spilt some somewhere, I'm sure. But other than that, it should be good. We'll let it get to operating temperature and keep checking for leaks, and keep checking the level in the radiator. Oh, there, just went an air bubble right there. Well, there she is, all buttoned up, ready to hit the road. Radiator's fixed, the thermostat's replaced, and good to go. Just keep an eye on it for leaks over the next few days, and after you park it, check it before you start it in the morning for your coolant level, make sure it hasn't dropped. Hope you enjoyed.